Hey everybody, Pete Bauer here, and I wanted to talk about the power of story when you take a very simple idea and execute it very well. And I want to use the movie A Quiet Place as an example. So if you haven't seen the movie, don't watch this because there will be spoilers. But first, I want to tell you a little story about some of the makers of that movie. In the 90s, a lot of people were making independent digital movies when the technology first came out. And two of the guys was Brian Woods and Scott Beck. And they were, I think, students in Iowa. And they made these really, really good movies. And they had all these great resources because they were college students. So they had access to locations and equipment and actors and things like that. But more importantly, they were just really good storytellers. And I actually bought some of their DVDs. This is one called Her Summer. This is another called University Heights. And my favorite by far is The Bride Wore Blood. And what's really neat is that those two guys actually wrote A Quiet Place. And I just couldn't be happier for them. So anyway, what's great about A Quiet Place is it takes a very simple idea, an everyday thing, and turns it into a threat. And I love those movies. Hitchcock did this with The Birds. John Carpenter did it with The Fog. And I don't know who did it with Chucky, but to take a child's toy and make every child's toy potentially a demonic threat against your life is a really cool idea. I actually did something similar in a screenplay I wrote once about evil that actually lived in the water. So water itself, a pool, a shower, sprinklers, can all be a threat. And so I love stories where they take something simple like this, like in A Quiet Place, it's sound. They take sound and make it a threat. And what I love about the film, too, is they don't give you any backstory. It starts off in the middle of this thing, and it's just aliens have landed on the planet. They're blind, but they can hear sound, and they kill anything that makes a noise. And the story is about a family trying to live a normal life in this horrible, horrible world. And it's really, really powerful. And I want to go over how the story fits into the storyline that I explained before. I'll link to that in the video. It's the beginning that explains it's only about 90 seconds from the previous video. And we'll go through it and show how they use sound at each critical moment to move the story forward, which is really, really smart. The thing I want to start with is the opening. Remember, in the first 10 minutes, audience decide whether they like a movie or not. And the first 10 minutes of this movie is really, really powerful. It shows the family being ultra quiet. It shows a little boy wanting to play with a toy. And when the little boy does play with a toy and it makes noise, the father tries to rescue him, tries to outrun an alien, but the child, who's only like 4 years old, is killed. And that's the end of the opening 10 minutes. And what's so powerful about that is something I read about that Joss Whedon did before. Joss Whedon, who's done Avengers and things like that, he made a show called Firefly that was canceled early. And so he finished up the story in a movie called Serenity. It's this movie right here. And in Serenity, he takes the most beloved character, the pilot named Wash. And right before the climax, after Wash has done his most amazing flying ever, in a moment of celebration, he gets killed, shockingly and immediately. And Wheaton says that he did this on purpose because he wanted the audience to know that when the rest of the crew is about to fight off the bad guys, that nobody is safe. Because if your favorite character can die, any of these guys can die. I actually did the similar thing in my first novel, Kneel and Pray. It's a young adult thriller. And in it, there's an innocent character who gets killed by the bad guys in a not too nice way. And I did it for the exact same reasons. It's right before the climax, and I wanted the readers not to feel comfortable that things are going to turn out the way they think. My son was reading the book, and he's like, my dad's not going to hurt this person. My dad's a nice guy. And then when that event happened, he just literally thought, they're all going to die. Which is exactly what I wanted him to think. I wanted that potential to be there. So the fact that in A Quiet Place, they chose that moment with that young child to do that, it meant all bets are off. No one is safe. Everyone's life is in danger going forward. And that's awesome. So the rest of the first act is the family existing in this life, trying to make it as normal as possible. They're not going to let their normal life be defined by what's going on around them. And so you find out that the wife is pregnant. And there's nothing more inevitable when it comes to sound than pregnancy. That woman without medication is going to be in pain and make sound when she gives birth. That child, when it's born, is going to make noise. And so choosing to make the wife pregnant gives you a sense of dread almost. You're happy, but there's also dread because of the inevitable threat that the birth of that child means in this world. So if you look at the rest of the story, everything's tied to sound. The transition between Act 1 and Act 2 is the first time that this family makes a loud noise. The first point in the second act, where the father and son go to a stream and a waterfall, and he explains, the dad does, that if the noise around you is louder than you, then you can make noise because the surrounding noise will cover you. And they actually have a conversation. The midpoint of the movie is where the wife goes into labor. And she actually steps on a nail too. It's really horrible. And the alien is coming to kill her. And so she is in labor, injured, going to give birth, no doubt about it, trying to avoid an alien. It's great stuff. The next major point in Act 2, the kids are on top of a corn silo while trying to stay safe while the dad goes to try to rescue the mother, and they fall into the corn silo and they make noise. Now, the oldest daughter, who's deaf, has an implant in her head and an earpiece that doesn't work, and the dad keeps trying to make new earpieces to help her to hear, which is interesting to think of a character who's deaf in a world that must be silent who wants to hear the silent world. It's kind of a cool idea. But with the new earpiece, whenever the aliens get close, it gives feedback to her. She doesn't know what's going on, and she doesn't realize that the aliens are disturbed by this feedback. And what's so great about that is that sound, which has been a threat, now becomes a weapon. And that's brilliant. Now, the transition between Act 2 and Act 3 is really heart-wrenching. The kids are in trouble, and the father, the only way he can save them is to make the alien come after him. And so what he does is he makes a noise to sacrifice himself so that the kids can escape. And the end of the movie is where the daughter realizes that her earpiece actually does feedback and it does disturb the aliens and now is a weapon. And so an alien comes into the house, the baby's crying, the mom's there with a shotgun. The aliens are hard to kill because they have natural armor, but when they're spasming because of the feedback, they're vulnerable. So the daughter realizes this, and they turn up the sound in the basement, they cause a feedback, and in this throes of anguish, the mom shoots the alien and kills it with a shotgun. One of the loudest weapons you can have, which is great. So early on in the movie, they establish that they think there's 3 aliens in the area. And so on these monitors, they see 2 more are coming. And what's so great about the end of the movie is that the daughter turns up the volume, the loudest it can get. And what's so great about that is that what? Sound was dangerous. And now it's their salvation. Now it's their weapon. So as the aliens are coming towards the house, they turn sound up all the way. And the last thing you see and hear in the movie is the mother cocking the shotgun. Sound. They're not afraid of sound anymore. They're going to use sound as a weapon. And every major event in the story is tied to sound. It's a great, simple idea. So anyway, I love A Quiet Place. It's one of my favorite movies probably in the last 20 years. And one last thing is that this is something that only can be done in film and not done in books, is that because in books you're in the character's head, but when you're watching a movie, the first half hour where no one's talking, it's very disconcerting. It gets under your skin because it's unnatural. Even if we're quiet in the real world, there's sounds around us. If you're in the middle of a forest, there's sounds around us. And John Krasinski, the director, who's also the actor in the movie, chose that when he's seeing it from the point of view of the deaf girl, that we don't hear anything, which is even more like nerve-wracking because there's some sound you need to hear, like if the aliens are near you. So it was a simple idea, exceptionally well executed, and made for a very powerful story. And I love stories like that, stories that take something everyday, something innocuous, something simple, and turn it into danger. It's a great idea, great movie. Check it out. Anyway, I just wanted to share that with you. I'll see you guys next time.